for gender-based violence or crimes, because there is a tendency, obviously it used to be perceived as a private matter, so they tend to mediate it. They tend to turn women away from seeking help. And I think even in the Philippines, right, Patricia, there is a statement that basically barangay officials cannot mediate gender-based violence cases. So, but recently, especially with the Istanbul Convention, that was like the forerunner. I think they tried to look into situations where, because these are global standards, right? So there are countries where actually they don't even have local justice systems. So like I was in Uganda and there's nothing there. And it will take you 6 hours to go to the nearest court, or or the police officers are unable to cope. So what they did was to just say no compulsory mediation. Now what that means in practice can be different from context to context, because in some places, like in Uganda or in India, or they usually have what they call non-negotiables. So what are things that can be subject to mediation, and what kind of environment should be in a mediation context? So they would talk about equal, sort of like that both have their support systems, that you cannot mediate criminal aspects of the case, but you can mediate the civil aspects. So they have certain things that they put in place, but in a way at this stage it's like context to context. Now I haven't worked with the shadow reports for the Istanbul Convention, but I've worked on the CEDAW shadow reports before. And usually they do listen, like the CEDAW committee members listen to the context within which mediation takes place. So when shadow reports or the government reports highlights, how mediation can restrict or hinder or help women survivors, they take that into account and use that context within which to give their advice. So in a way, even if they say ban on compulsory mediation, even if you have non-compulsory mediation, they will still look into the practice of how it's done and whether or not it benefits women. So I think there's still room for that, for showing context and showing impact on women survivors.
Just to add to that, I guess in the Philippine context, what they've done now is, although it's a very limited response, like right now, there's still that ban on compulsory mediation for the first three forms of violence, which is physical, psychological, and sexual, but they've already permitted mediation for economic violence. Why? Because if your very issue is he's not giving me support and you put him in jail, he can't work. So you actually give him a reason not to give support. So there are some cases where it's common sense and logic working more than a legal system. And I think this is like a very slow move towards what Marissa was saying earlier, that prosecution and imprisonment is not the only solution, and that we should really look into the well-being of the one and what they really need, and make sure that your responses are relevant to those actual needs.